Alright guys, final part of my natural bodybuilding tier list. I'm quite sad to finish this series. But the good point is that today we have probably some of the most important concepts, so fasten your seatbelt. And we begin with sleep, an important aspect of your lifestyle that you should optimize. Most of your recovery and muscle building happens during sleep, so there will be a direct correlation between your results and the quality of your sleep. The longer and the better you sleep, the more you will build muscle on the long term, especially as a natural. So it's gonna go directly there. However, I would like to bring some relativity to the topic. Don't think that because you sleep only 6 or 7 hours a day means that you will get no gains. Usually, very few people actually can afford very high quality and sleep length because of modern life. But there's also the quality aspect of it, and also the rest of your life matters. Your nutrition, your stress levels. So if you got many good things on point here, but your sleep is a little bit lackluster, don't worry too much about it. So even though you do need a minimum level of length and quality to support your training, hence the mandatory ranking, don't over obsess about it. Okay, next we have strength standards. And obviously strength is directly correlated to your muscle mass. However, I believe you should mostly care about strength gains comparing to your own history. When it comes to building muscle, strength standards can actually be counterproductive because it can lead you to make mistakes, to try to rush your progressive overload. But of course, it's always nice to know where you are at compared to an average. So I guess I'm gonna put it in depends. If it's a kind of goal you can take with a certain grain of salt, then yeah, it's gonna be a good thing. It's a number you can visualize and it's gonna help you to grind to it. And yeah, obviously, if the topic was more just pure strength, regardless of the standards, then I would probably put it here. But it would be quite redundant with the progressive overload, right? So that's why I made a different concept here. Also, to convey the message that you should mostly care about comparing yourself to yourself for the most part. So, yeah, I think this overall topic of strength standards and comparing your performance and results to others, it really has its place in depends. Can be good or very good, and bad and very bad as well. Next, we have stability. And that one I think is gonna vary quite a lot depending mostly on your level actually. The more advanced you become, the more important it also becomes because the heavier the weight you have to move and the more precise you have to be about the muscles you want to target, the more perfect stability becomes important. However, I have already seen some people who obsess so much about stability that they end up using only machines because this is where you're the most locked in. So I think in that case you lose a little bit of something in the process. I think you probably want a variety of lifts and have some free weights as well, so that would be somewhat of a warning I would have against it. So I think overall I'm actually gonna put it in crucial in the sense that it's not mandatory when you are a beginner and let's say even intermediate, but pretty early it's gonna become more and more important to keep getting results. Okay, then we have the stretch. I think it's a bit like the pump. You really feel that the muscle is being stimulated, but I think we have to remain objective and acknowledge the fact that the stretch is not everything. You also want to have peak contraction exercises. And this brings us back to the notion of variety that, as you can see, is very important for me. Because I think for the long term, if you don't have variety, you will always end up having some form of imbalance or injury. In the case of the stretch, think about it. It's more efficient because it puts your muscle under a stronger stimulus. But maybe you also strain your body so much that you get more injuries. I think everything can have its place in a program, but it's all about balance and also getting to know your body. So the notion of the stretch in itself, out of context, is actually impossible to assess. So that's why I think I'm gonna put it in depends. If it's like the majority of your program, but you still include some contraction exercises, then I think you're good, and you will probably indeed optimize your hypertrophy. But if you fall for the current meta of only doing very deep stretches, then yeah, I think it's a problem. Next, we have supplements. I think this one is gonna be very easy to rank. It's gonna go in depends also, because overall some of them are very useful and very well researched, like creatine and whey protein and caffeine. But there is also so much snake oil in this industry and so many things that can be useful, but in their supplement form they are not being ingested by the body, or the quantities they mention are not even correct. So my point of view is to stick only to the basics and a few others that just will depend on your personal circumstances. So among those there is zinc, magnesium and potassium. I will also make a video soon about glucosamine for joint health, but I don't consider those as necessary. If you can get all of these through your nutrition, then it's much better, of course. But yeah, let's be honest, it's not always easy for everybody to fine tune your daily nutrition to the point you can make sure you just get enough of these very essential minerals. So the point is to objectively assess your nutrition, see what you need the most and what you can afford to buy as a supplement. Okay, then we have technique. And here you can see I differentiate it from perfect form versus cheating. If you remember, I put that topic in depends because my main argument was that the only perfect form is the one that fits you and your goals. So, in a way, this is going to be represented here by technique, honing your technique, really getting into your own groove with all the movements that you identify as the most productive for you, and then spamming them and grinding them. So in that case, I'm gonna put it in mandatory, because fine tuning your technique is probably gonna be synonymous with your muscle building journey itself. In the first few months of training, you will grow probably no matter what you do, and if you do it the best way you can, then you will grow more. But after that, refining your technique is probably gonna be one of the main drivers of your results with all of these. In a way, you could also have a kind of more general definition of technique and include everything in it. You could say that mastering intensity and progressive overload and even mastering the mindset is part of developing a masterful technique. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it in mandatory. Next we have tempo. And the way I understand tempo is a variable that you can adjust to basically influence your intensity. But I chose that GIF here as a kind of spoiler of what I think about overthinking your tempo. Because at my gym I could already hear some people talking about some specific protocol, of counting 4 seconds for your negative and things like that. And one guy even told me that tempo is everything. So, I can understand that once you become advanced and already as a intermediate, it can become a nice way to get more out of less weight. But to say that it's everything is probably a bit overreaching, right? In my opinion, everything here is everything. So for those reasons, I'm gonna put it in depends. And besides, I think tempo can be very much of a intuitive thing. If you are in touch with your body and connected to your muscle, then the right tempo will just come to you naturally. Next, we have testosterone, and obviously there's not much to discuss here. I believe everybody is aware of how important it is, to the point it might actually be overrated. As long as you have decent levels, you'll be able to grow. And then the more you can optimize it, the more it will help you. But I think that a point that is never discussed, if you're over obsessed about testosterone, then you're gonna raise your stress levels and it's gonna be counterproductive. Obviously, I'm not saying here that you should do nothing about it if you know that your levels are below average or just average. After all, it is true that we now have an environment that really make our levels problematic. So that's where you may want to care about supplements. Like I said, zinc, vitamin D, they're gonna be important. And then also many other things that are not so discussed, like vitamin C. I made a short video about it not long ago. But again, just like with sleep or genetics, don't over obsess about it. Just do your best without it messing too much with your daily life and making it hard for you to have a normal life. So that would be my word of caution. However, obviously, objectively, it is very important. If you have very low levels, it's gonna be tough to build a lot of muscles. So I'm gonna put it in crucial. But just take it easy and think about all of these things first, and this will follow. Try to fix your sleep, try to fix your nutrition and macros, train with intensity, work on your mindset, recover properly, and your testosterone will rise for sure. Okay, then we have training logs. And this one, I have no hesitation whatsoever. I'm gonna put it in mandatory. It's obviously gonna be very useful for you to correctly assess your progressive overload and what you should use on a given day, but also just after a few months and even a few years, you can better see what works or not. You can make correlations between some exercises and some styles of training and the results you got in terms of weight and measurements. So if you're in it for the long term and you care about results, you should definitely log all the sets you perform. Okay, maybe a few you don't need to, like some warm-up sets, or when you do maybe some partials on lightweight isolation. But the things you don't log should definitely be the minority. And yeah, some people at my gym sometimes they told me I just don't have the discipline or I just don't have the time to log it. And I'm like, but think about all the time you're losing over the years in terms of gains and roadblocks that are gonna stop you and you won't even know what's going on because you're not logging. And if you don't have enough discipline to write a certain weight by an amount of reps, how can you have the discipline to lift long term? I mean, it's not complicated. It takes 2 seconds after each set. But yeah, technically, I guess once you become advanced, it could just be crucial, maybe. However, I'm gonna leave it there because I really want to put an emphasis on it. If you don't log your trainings, that's just the first thing you should think about before any of these things. Okay, and lastly, we have volume. And it's a great coincidence that volume is gonna be the last topic because what I'm gonna say about it is gonna apply to the whole tier list. And I think that's an important message. On YouTube, you will see a lot of videos discussing all of these topics separately and often opposing them, but none of these can be assessed separately. They can all be ranked, but the way you rank them will depend on how much of a thing you do and how much it should be, depending on you, your fitness past, present, and future. When it comes to volume, for instance, there is this opposition to intensity. Which one is more important? Should you train with more volume and less intensity, or high intensity and low volume? Both can probably have very similar results, because you could end up with the same amount of tonnage, for instance. But the thing is that maybe one of these approaches just doesn't fit you. It's gonna depend on a lot of other factors. It's also true for most of the things I discussed. So volume as a concept obviously is gonna be mandatory to focus on, to take into account. If you don't adjust it depending on where you are in your training journey and what you may need to break some plateaus, then you will probably spin your wheels for a while. Do too little volume for what your body needs and you will stop growing. Do far too high volume and you will just burn out and not recover properly and stop growing as well. So it's something you have to monitor consistently, and that's also why you need the training logs. Everything can work as long as you are smart about it, you log it, you analyze it, you check your results, and you adapt to it. Otherwise, you can run into a lot of troubles. And so that's it for the video, guys, and that's it for the whole series. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a kind of summary of my whole fitness philosophy. Of course, there are many things missing because I had to keep the videos short enough and there were so many notions, 50 of them. So I could only convey the essence of my ideas about it. So yeah, if you agree or disagree with my ranking, please put a comment. I would be very curious to have some feedback about the whole series maybe or so. It was a lot of work and I'm a tiny channel, so obviously every comment and every like means the world to me right now. And also, of course, don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss the next video, which will be about how I managed to break a plateau in my back development. So thank you for watching, guys, and see you on the next one. Bye.